Good morning, St. Louis. This is Cards 365, powered by Gray Bar and presented by our friends at DraftKings. The man behind the machine, the guy pulling all the switches and knobs, that's Ethan Hannaford. I'm Luke Slabaugh. Ethan, how we doing today?
No complaints. Cardinals a solid 5-0 win last night against the Cubbies. Anytime you beat the Cubbies, I feel like you just got this extra little zip. So feeling good, excited about that. And like I said, anytime that you can beat Chicago, you hope you can build off of it. We know that the Cardinals, as of now, right, aren't necessarily in a place where they are, all in, going for the postseason. So you're not as hooked on the wins and losses at this point in the year as you were earlier on, right? So, but with this, when it comes to the Cubbies, that's never the case. You're always going for the series win. So the Cardinals put themselves in good position for that yesterday. A lot of good things to break down and talk about, and looking forward to it.
Always some good enmity between the Cardinals and the division rival Cubs,
Amen.
just up north in Illinois. I was thinking about this last night. I'm driving eastbound on 60 Farfardi. I'm going out to dinner in the Clayton U City area. And I'm not feeling the sense of traffic backup right before that 170 interchange. Like once you get past Brentwood and that exit out there, you start to see that the kind of the buckling of traffic. And I didn't feel that. Announced attendance last night of 33,453. And it just feels a little bit different watching the game, seeing the red versus blue City Connect, Yachty in the dugout for the first time in a long time. We had some interesting insight from our friend Bernie Miklasz this week on Yachty's two-game coaching stint and a 5-0 win. This is a very good morning to be a St. Louis fan and a resident of the city as they do go for the series win today. But it felt, I don't want to say normal, but for a team that is just one game over 500, is a few games back in the wild card, it felt meaningful.
You look at last year compared to this year, record wise, and they're only a few games behind at this point where they were last year. The best part is that they sold at this deadline, right? I mean, like I said, at this point, anything when it comes to wins and losses is a plus. And Stephen Carey and I talked about this on last night's post-game show. The biggest win at this point for the Cardinals would be figuring out the answers for some of these young guys and who they are. And I think they're getting a better idea on some of them. But if you could really get Jordan Walker going consistently in these last couple months of the season, if Lars Nootbaar was able to get the bat going, continue to play sharp defense, and whether it's keeping him and solidifying himself in this lineup or if it's maximizing his trade value, those kinds of things are the things that Cardinals fans should be looking at and paying extra attention to, right? But when you look at this team right now compared to last year's, are they that much worse? Are they? I mean, obviously, you don't have Ryan Helsley closing things out at the back end. You have some uncertainty in the bullpen still, even though your back end guys in a small sample, in those high leverage positions, in Matt Swanson, Jojo Romero, Kyle Leahy, and Riley O'Brien have really impressed. So, I'll take where the Cardinals are at right now post selling, right? People could argue it's a soft sell. Well, you could also look at those three and say most teams that sell off that caliber of three back end guys probably aren't having the immediate success that the Cardinals are in that position with their youth. So I think that is an encouraging sign. And, they've won 3 out of 4 against good teams. Am I digging too much into that? I'm not going to at this point. I need to see it for a little bit of a longer stretch. And it needs to be even extra longer because their next series is against the Rockies. Yes, I know they just lost a series against the Rockies within the last few weeks. I don't care. A win against the Rockies, a series win against the Rockies still tells me not enough about this team. So I'm going to need to see it over an extended period of time before I'm like, oh, they're kind of in the mix here. But in reality, you got a scuffling Mets team. They're a game behind the Reds. It's not like if the Cardinals were to put a few wins together, all of a sudden you look, you say, Oh, they're only 3.5 games out of the wild card. That's kind of interesting. I'm not saying the Cardinals are a playoff team by any means whatsoever. So please, nobody take this as that. I'm just saying, right, if the quality of play continues to look like what it is now, at least to a certain extent, things might get a little bit more interesting here in the next couple weeks, especially with, right, some of those weaker teams on the schedule.
There is a slight possibility, given the makeup of the NL wildcard race, that Ali Marmol's team could backdoor its way into
Very
a
slight.
wildcard spot,
Very slight.
perhaps that last one. Very slight. Last night, heading into the game, Fangraphs had St. Louis as a 5% chance to make the playoffs, which is ain't happening. And today, after a win over the Cubs, almost doubled to 8.9%, 4.5 games back right now. You'd have to leapfrog the Giants, Reds, and the Mets, all of whom have cooled down considerably. And so just it would be a good morale boost for letting the kids play, but also seeing some increased production out of guys like Jordan Walker. Hits in 14 of 17 games. First home run since mid-May last night that went a projected 433. Dude hit 304 in July. He's 7 for 20 this month. That's 350 with no walks. And just keep in mind for Jordan Walker, as it says in the chat, if they don't start Walker, we riot. Thank you, Leo, at 1049. He's just 23. Whatever happened with Jordan Walker's development, it might have been mishandled. I'm not going to make that call. But again, 23 years old, he's got the heart of a great player. He's got the charisma. He's got the want to. I think is way too early to make judgments on Jordan Walker, but these last couple months, let's see it heat up.
Yeah, there's been encouraging stretches here as of late. I know you just mentioned some numbers. I did some late night number crunching myself since July 19th, batting 339, a home run, 7 extra base hits, a 872 on OPS during that time. Some encouraging numbers out of him. I think probably last night was the most encouraging game with all of those exit velocities being well over 100 miles an hour. Shows, right, that he's hitting the ball hard, which usually when you're hitting the ball hard consistently means that you're seeing the ball well, right? And that's been the whole issue with Jordan Walker since the start of 2024. As he hasn't been seeing the ball well, he hasn't been able to time the ball because, well, let's be honest, Major League Baseball is a very difficult sport. And hitting good quality pitching, Major League pitching, is one of the hardest things to do in sports. And it's one of the biggest adjustments. That's why sophomore year slumps exist, right? Is because when the league learns how to pitch to you, when they figure out what your weaknesses are, all of a sudden you have to respond back. And in the case of Jordan Walker, teams found out he's not very disciplined on breaking pitches outside. And that sets him up for fastballs up, fastballs in. And Jordan Walker, it's taken a long time for him to consistently adjust to that pitch. Am I saying that Jordan Walker has figured everything out? No, not whatsoever. This is the purpose of this point of the season, these last couple of months, is if he goes through a stretch where he doesn't look good, right, or the numbers aren't there, keep playing him. Keep sending him out there. Allow him to figure it out and work through it, because now you're starting to see him work through it semi-consistently. I know that he was on the injured list for a long time and had a very long rehab in Springfield, working through that timing, trying to figure out that timing. So, but what you've seen since he came back post All-Star game, All-Star break, has been really encouraging. So Jordan Walker has been good, but it's not just Jordan Walker. Mason Wynn, since the middle of July, is batting just a tad under 350. We know that he leads all of Major League Baseball this year in outs above average. So you know what you're getting in him defensively. And now he's consistently putting together the at-bat. Super encouraging sign. I love what I've seen from Nolan Gorman since he's come off the injured list on August 1st. Just one home run, just one extra base hit even, but the approach continues to be a little more disciplined. Yes, the strikeout numbers are in the mix. That's always going to be the case with him. He's never not going to strike out, but if he's not striking out at a 35% tick, right? If he's able to keep that in the 25% range, you feel better about that once a game than once every 3 at-bats, in my personal opinion, when you're able to mix in the OPS and how hard he's consistently hitting it right now. Lars Nootbaar, I think he's also shown some good signs since returning from the injured list. So I think there's some encouraging things that we're seeing right now from some of these young guys specifically that you had question marks about going into these last couple months, and you said, I want to see these guys either put it together or make it clear that it's time to move on. But ideally, all of them put it together. So the ones that you do move on from, Hein Bloom has a little bit of a better time trying to find and maximize the return in the upcoming offseason for trades to kind of bring in some necessity. So I think some encouraging signs overall here from some of these young guys over the past anywhere from, I guess I would say, week to 6 weeks probably. So good stuff.
Encouraging game on Friday night. Multi-hit games from Walker, Wynn, Thomas Ajayci, Pedro Pajes, and Alec Burleson, who went 3 for 4. In this never-ending game of Russian roulette called Cardinals sinker baller pitches to contact, Michael McGreevy had a positive result. 6 innings of shutout ball, sticking it to the Cubs. From your perspective, Ethan, what was working?
Well, I mean, here's the thing when it comes to Michael McGreevy. It's not much is going to change from a game planning perspective when it comes to these contact pitchers like Michael McGreevy, like Andre Palante. Obviously, to a certain extent, execution is important. I'm not saying that's not the case, right? But they're going to rely heavily on the sinker ball, and they're going to rely heavily on their secondary pitches to keep teams off balance with those sinker balls, right? With Andre Palante, you notice that he's way more dominant when his breaking stuff is on. When he's not able to locate his breaking stuff, then the sinker becomes much more predictable. Similar with Michael McGreevy, except I would argue that pitch is his changeup, and his changeup was on last night. I would argue that we saw some of the nastiest changeups thrown last night by a Cardinal pitcher in a long time. So when you have those secondary pitches working, it makes it much more difficult to time up even the sinker ball. So I think that was what was the best thing working for Michael McGreevy last night. Like I said, you're going to have a lot of similar game plans when it comes to guys like him, like Andre Palante. A lot of it's how can you execute? And last night, Michael McGreevy executed well. A lot of soft contact, 6 hits over 6 innings, only 3 strikeouts, 1 walk as well. That's an encouraging sign. Get those freebies out of here. And against a good offensive team, I know the Cubs have cooled off as of late, but this is a guy that is now seen in his last 5 starts, the Cubs twice and the Padres twice. And I think that for a young guy, you've seen some good signs. And both of those first matchups, there was some major roadblocks. I think he allowed 9 earned runs, maybe he was 7 against the Padres. He allowed 5 earned runs against the Cubs in his first outing. Second outing against the Padres, a little bumpy to start. I think he allowed 4 runs over 3 innings, but he was dominant over his final 3 innings to give you a respectable 6 innings, 4 earned runs final line. And then last night, really continuing what we saw from him in those final few innings in his previous start against a good offensive team. I think what we've seen over the last 9 innings thrown from Michael McGreevy is super encouraging. Does this mean that this is the Michael McGreevy that we are going to get every single outing? No. And if that's your expectation, then you're going to be very disappointed because, one, you have the combination of, like I said, the pitch to contact guy. Sometimes you're going to get some bad batted ball luck. That's going to happen. Sometimes they're not going to execute, so there's going to be harder bat to ball. And then also it's a young guy, so you just have to give him extra patience. This is not a guy that's you're expecting to slot in as the number 2 in your rotation. You're expecting to slot him in as the number 4. So a lot of encouraging signs over the last game and a half from Michael McGreevy. You hope he continues to carry it in the right direction.
And that's all you can ask for the final 2 months. Progress is not linear,
Yeah.
but continued growth out of your young starters and your young players, and that's the name of the game. Any final thoughts before we wrap up Friday night and move ahead towards Saturday, Mr. Hannaford?
Well, Brandon commenting here saying, "Give me quality start McNasty all the time," and I gotta agree with the guy. It's refreshing to finally see the Cardinals getting to him, right? I mean, there had been so much just anticipation and to a certain extent some patience shown by the fan base that ran out pretty quickly, but it's nice to finally see the organization get to the point, right, where he can be here every day. He doesn't have to worry about what if am I gonna get sent down after today's start? Am I gonna have to fly back to Memphis? And then here we go again. And he doesn't have to worry about that. And I have to imagine that's a nice relief and weight off of his back. And I think for Cardinals fans, it's nice to see another young starting pitcher that you expect to be a part of things in 2026 getting that work in, right? We knew Eric Fetty wasn't going to. We know Miles Michaelis isn't going to. So it's nice to see at least four pieces now that you have a good idea will be a part of 2026's rotation. The only one not being Michaelis, right? So, you hope they can continue to move in the right direction with him. Mason Windu commenting here real quick. Luke and Ethan, do either of you have any ideas as a solution for Michaelis if the Cards get to say 3 games out of the wild card? Can they keep starting him? Good question. I'll give my thoughts out. Luke, do you have any thoughts on this?
My first thought is Mason Windu is an excellent avatar
Oh,
name on YouTube.
isn't it
So
phenomenal?
my applause to you, sir or ma'am.
As far as what to do with Miles Michaelis, I would argue that the Cardinals, regardless of if they're 3 games out or not, you can make the argument that Michaelis shouldn't be an option. But here's what it comes down to. When you look at the other options, at this point, I know Quinn Matthews has had a couple of good starts. I don't feel great putting Quinn Matthews in that sort of high leverage situation, starting a game. All of a sudden, you get to September and the Cardinals are in the mix. I don't want my number 2 prospect that's had a couple of good starts, but in large part has had location and accuracy issues and some velocity issues this year in Memphis. I don't feel great about him starting in that spot. Do you feel better about Kyle Leahy starting in that spot, having never started before, than you do about Miles Michaelis? Listen, I know it's not been a good product from Miles Michaelis. Over the last 10 starts, this is a guy that's ERA is at like 6.5, I think is what I reported last week. It's not good. But he's been in this situation. He's been in that scenario. If you really feel like you're in the mix, I don't know if the Cardinals would do it. I don't think that they would. I think they're much more likely to see it. We're much more likely to see Leahy or maybe Quinn Matthews if the Cardinals continue to not remain in the mix. It wouldn't surprise me if they got in the mix, if they play for it. And that means keeping Michaelis in the rotation. Now, there's a very good chance that Michaelis remains in the rotation regardless. So I wouldn't look at that and say, oh, they're just playing to win. No, I think they're more so just trying to care for their team. There's good reason as if Kyle Leahy doesn't start, I understand why. He's never started before. You want to take care of your bullpen and keep him rolling where he's been rolling. And wait till the offseason always to start stretching that stuff out. Wait to spring training. That's not a bad mindset. I understand why people would want the other. That doesn't make the part you disagree with, right, a bad option. And I guess the other option being Quinn Matthews is that it's a small sample size of good that you've seen from him so far. So it's not like keeping Miles Michaelis in there is a crazy option. I understand the desire to get him out of there because you want to see something for the youth. But I'm not convinced that we will see it at this point as of yet. We'll have to see if it continues to get worse and worse and worse as the year goes on.
I am convinced that we will see Quinn Matthews and JJ Weatherholt jerseys at Busch Stadium
Oh,
by the end of September. And let me know in the chat if you do see it. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to Cardinals 365. We're powered by Gray Bar and brought to you by DraftKings, the crown is yours. Download the DraftKings Pick Six app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STLSPORTS for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick Six credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick Six from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
To your point, Ethan, I don't think this 40-man roster lends itself to a bullpen game like, for example, the Cubs earlier this season throwing a bullpen game. And we even see this just in terms of depth. We've had some comments in the chat today about the quality of depth. Bench players now playing pseudo every day, like Garrett Hampson. And for this Cardinals rotation as well, it runs pretty thin. And that's why Miles Michaelis has not been shipped off or DFA'd or anything of that nature. There's really not a next level replacement player that can fill in for him right now. And you would be taking a gamble on a Quinn Matthews in a pennant race. That's also how some Rick Ankiel types are made, where it's just, wheels come off in those high leverage situations. Which also, leads into today. The Cubs did address their pitching depth over the offseason with injuries to Justin Steele and Jameson Taillon. They've had to rely on today's starter, Colin Ray, who's a bottom of the rotation guy. Cardinals fans might remember the last time they saw him on the bump was the ill-fated 4th of July game. The 8 home runs, bombs bursting in air, courtesy of Miles Michaelis and company. That was quite a game to forget. I was just starting to go down with mono when that happened.
Oh,
I remember doing a show with Matthew Rocchio, and I just started sweating profusely. And he was like off camera. He's like, "Are you all right?" No, I wasn't. So that is the starting matchup for today. Colin Ray, right-hander on the mound. Andre Palante, given a heaping dose of sinker balls. 2 earned runs last time out on Saturday against the Padres. Graceffo gave up a number of runs there in relief. 7-3 loss to San Diego, but Palante pitching to a 4.57 ERA this season.
Yeah, almost everything that I said about Gordon Graceffo, let's just pull the old copy and paste, right? Because part of that I did discuss Palante, right? But when it comes to Andre Palante, so much of it is a couple of those things that I mentioned, right? How are you executing those secondary pitches? I think that's even more extreme for Andre Palante, because when he is able to locate his slider and his curveball, knuckle curve, his quality of pitching is so much better. It's been a problem on and off this year where he has spiked that pitch far too often or hasn't been able to locate it accurately. So if you get the version of Andre Palante that you have gotten at times this year, it has not been all bad from Andre Palante. Let me just say that. I think fans tend to get a little bit pessimistic when it comes to him. Listen, Andre Palante is a back-end starter. Let's not forget that this guy in 2024 pitched to a 3.78 ERA in 20 starts. He started 22 games this year. So obviously by year's end, he'll be probably, 7 or 8 starts ahead of that. But this is a guy that threw really well in 2024 and unlocked some things. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to, for the remainder of his career, be a 3.8 ERA pitcher. But I think that you have an idea of what you have in Andre Palante, and what you have is a back-end starter. And the problem with the Cardinals is not that Andre Palante's quality is back-end starter. The quality throughout the year has been there's been too many back-end starters in the rotation. He's the young guy out of all those guys, though. I mean, the other two you could argue at times in the year were, Miles Michaelis in his final 10 starts of the year has been. Prior to that, he was mid-rotation caliber. And Eric Fetty when he went on his complete down roll spiral. Sonny Gray, in large part, has been pretty good this year. And the part that frustrates me about Sonny Gray is when you look at his final stats, it's not number one material. It's probably right around 4 right now if I had to guess without looking, which is not, like I said, not number one material. But so much of what blows that up is the blow up starts, and he's had a handful of those this year, which have just been god awful. And they're part of the game, yes, but you get a better version of Sonny Gray in more games than you don't. The problem is when you don't get a good version, you don't get a good version, and teams are hitting him all over the ballpark, and it tends to be out of the ballpark. So anyway, going out on my tangent there. And then Matthew Liberatore has been middle of the rotation-esque in large part this year. So the problem isn't Andre Palante. Problem is the Cardinals having too many similar styles of pitcher. We know that they're starting to address that issue. Let's hope that we get a better version of Andre Palante today again, that the offense can get rolling again. Colin Ray has been decent this year. Kudos to him for just moving his career in a better direction over these last couple of years. His first, I should say his once returning to the league, his first couple of years back were bumpy, but the last 3 years been very consistent in that mid to low 4 ERA range. And this year, arguably has been his best season of his career. So, but let's hope that the Cardinals have a better result today, Luke, than they did on that oh so horrific 4th of July.
That was definitely, and that might have been an Apple TV special as well, if I remember correctly. That was an insane game, July 4th. But a lot has changed since then. The Cubs are starting to slip a little bit in the standings. The Cardinals are holding serve, just a few games out of the wild card spot. That's a 6:15 first pitch on Big Fox. Call letters KTVI for you St. Louis area residents.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, it's always fun when the Cards get the international game. I think they just added one as well here later in the month. I don't have that date off the top of my head. There's been some criticism in the chat today for Cardinals manager Ollie Marmol, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't understand it. When you look at what Ollie Marmol has done with this roster the last 2 years, I don't understand how you can be that critical of him and the job that he has done. How he has been able to handle a major logjam of a roster, big-time organizational issues. I don't understand how his management of the bullpen. I don't get it. I do not get it. I thought that we were past this, and I know it's only been a couple of people, I guess, in the chat today. It hasn't been everyone, and maybe most of the people would agree with me at this point. I don't understand why we are still talking about Ollie Marmol as if he is the issue here. I thought we were past that. I thought that had been made pretty clear from this point. And the team's ceilings at times this year, right? You could argue that it doesn't go solely to coaching, obviously. But I think that with young teams like this specifically, they should get a little bit more credit because of their ability to unlock that to a certain extent, I think, and work with those young guys. I don't understand the disdain for Ollie Marmol at this point in the year, or at this point in his career, even based off of how the last couple of seasons have gone. I don't know if it's still related to the firing of Mike Schilt. If it is, we're 5 years out, guys. Just because it was a bad firing doesn't mean it was a bad hiring. And Ollie Marmol has also, in my opinion, grown leaps and bounds since he started as a manager. King's Echo commenting saying, dude, Marmol has no fire. Speaking as someone that has been in the clubhouse, was in the clubhouse for all of 23 and 24, and is in the clubhouse still on the occasion, I can tell you, King's Echo, 100% that you're wrong. 100% that you're wrong. What you are mistaking this for, right, is this no fire, is consistency in what you show the media. and keeping a straight face when things aren't always great. We aren't meant to always see that. But I don't know how. Still, I think at times we have seen very clearly that fire from Ollie Marmol. I completely disagree with that take. Brandon commenting saying, if we make the playoffs with this roster, you have to give Ollie Marmol Manager of the Year. 100% agree. Even if they don't get there, he's probably still in the mix, and I still think he'll get some votes just based off of the performance that he's had this year. I do agree, though, if the Cardinals don't get to the playoffs, they'll probably give that award to a team that did. But man, I just I cannot get over fans still being on this, because I thought we were past this. I thought he had proven up to this point, right, the job that he had done with the quality of roster he's had the last couple of years. I don't know, Luke. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I have a 1,000-yard stare view of this because I'm seeing some comments in the chat that are criticizing his management of the team in the 2022 postseason. Every manager is bad their first time in the playoffs. You cannot do anything right. With trifling exceptions, no one their first go around in the Major League postseason is going to push all the buttons correctly. And even some managers have fumbled their way head first into a World Series by not managing a roster well. Joe Madden in 2016 with the Cubs made constant bad moves with the bullpen and was able to win the World Series in Game 7. I think Bob Brenly back with the Arizona Diamondbacks in 01 was constantly criticized. So you cannot be the smartest man in the room and still win a World Series. For Ollie Marmol, he's still the youngest manager in baseball. You and I, Ethan, both know him to be a good man. He is generally well liked in that clubhouse, and the people who, didn't like him or didn't mesh well with him aren't Cardinals anymore. Secondly, I think what's very important, and you've drilled this home very well, is you play the game with the roster that you're dealt. If Ollie Marmol is in charge of roster construction or is trying to change his team ship of Theseus style midway through the season, you're likely not throwing Eric Fetty and Miles Michaelis out there, but you have to play the game with the horses that you've got. And for someone like Michaelis, who's been a starter his whole career, or Eric Fetty, who was very good in Chicago, you have to give those guys a solid opportunity. He was basically following instructions. This is not an Ollie Marmol problem, and he's not even the symptom of the problem. Now, I understand the qualms that fans have, and for St. Louis Cardinals fans, hand it to all the Cardinals fans out there, St. Louis area and further. Very passionate, can be stubborn, but smart, and very smart baseball fans, highly intuitive. So when you see something start to stagnate over a 4-season sample size, absolutely you're going to cast some of the blame on the
Sure.
managers because he's
Sure.
been around that circle of influence for so long. I get that. And that poses a larger scale question that you and I are not equipped to answer for 2026. You've got Ollie Marmol going into a contract year. What do you do with a new president of baseball ops in Chaim Bloom? Another thing, Ollie Marmol was never given the toys that Mike Schilt was over his stretch as manager. Mike Schilt got Marcelo Zuna. He got Paul Goldschmidt. He got Nolan Arenado. He got guys that were supposed to push this team into a pennant winning drive. Didn't happen, and there was definitely some clashing with Schilt and John Mozeliak. And you go back and look at the Bernie bomb that dropped this week about Yachty sneaking his way into the clubhouse for a couple of games. Yachty thinks the world of Ollie, doesn't think so of John Mozeliak. And that's probably the way that fans are as well. They understand that this roster is not built like a competitive Walt Jocketty team of the late or mid 2000s and John Mozeliak's first go round winning that World Series in 2011. So I get it. Ollie Marmol is understandably in the line of fire, but
Sure.
we know him to be a good man. He's the youngest manager in baseball. He does have the experience and wherewithal now to be a good manager. He was in over his skis in 2022 when they won 90 games on the strength of Pujols and Yachty and Wainwright and Goldschmidt's MVP style year and Arenado. Like those guys lifted this team. That was probably the last really good Cardinals team that we've seen in terms of roster makeup. If Chaim Bloom addresses that and gives Ali Marma a little bit more of a chance in his contract year, great. If they decide to go separate ways, that would not surprise me at all. But Ali's an organizational guy, has been since 2007. He's a loyal guy, he's a good guy, and he's doing the best that he can. This roster is not inspiring. That's all I got to say. And I'm not holding water for anyone. That's just my 1,000 foot view of this mess. End scene. Off soapbox.
Well said. Very well said. The last thing I'll comment, right, is when trying to figure out, maybe Chaim Bloom does want his own guy. Maybe. I'm not saying there aren't options out there, but I can tell you this much. Whether Ali stays or goes, wherever he goes, he's going to have success because of the kind of manager that he is, the style in which he manages, what he's been able to pull out of this team the last couple of years, I think is pretty evident of that. So I hope that the Cardinals find a way for him to stay. I hope that he gets an extension this offseason. I'd be very intrigued if Ali does not get an extension this offseason, what the future looks like going into on an expiring contract in the final season. That would be interesting. But I imagine there's a good chance that we probably get that answered this upcoming offseason. I think you probably know the writing is on the wall if he does not get the extension this offseason. Could be wrong. That's just my thoughts.
Just keep winning. And that's what the Cardinals look to do. They look to take the series against the Chicago Cubs. That's a 6:15 first pitch on Big Fox. And then, as some have alluded to, Sunday Night Baseball to wrap up this series. That'll do it for Cards 365. He's Ethan Hannaford. We're powered by Gray Bar and presented by DraftKings. Any final thoughts, Ethan, before we close the book on this 38-minute long Cards 365?
Well, you said just keep winning. I like that. I liked that little formula right there. And let's keep seeing what we've seen out of the young pieces, right? Continue to either know that they're going to be a part of the core or that you're going to be able to get something out of them. That is music to my ears hearing either of those two options.
Well, have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you back here for the post-game show as the Cardinals look to take the series from the Chicago Cubs. Thanks for watching and listening to Cardinals 365.